What's up guys, Chaos Shinobi here. This is What If Naruto Had Dark Mangekyou. Summary: Naruto decides he will no longer tolerate the village's hate, so he decides to send it back tenfold, and through his hatred the Dark Sharingan is born. Chapter 8. Naruto's eyes were blinking open, a flash of red flaring behind his eyelids, opening to reveal a tomoe in each one. The Sharingan. To say that Uchiha Shisui was shocked was an understatement. When he had rushed Naruto over to the hospital, coerced half the staff into giving him emergency treatment, and provided him his own blood at a minute's notice, he did not expect in the least that his pupil would awaken possessing his clan's feared Dujutsu, the eyes that had bestowed notoriety of the highest sort to those that wielded them. He did not expect him to awaken that night at all. His wounds after all had been pretty serious, not to mention how long he may have lay there bleeding out onto his floor. However, it would be inaccurate as well to say that the fact transcended his wildest imagination. After all, he had been speculating quite extensively over the past week concerning what seemed to be Naruto's enigmatic bloodline. He just needed some confirmation before all became clear. As Naruto fell once more into that state of semi-unconsciousness he had been going in and out of, the man turned his attention to arranging for that confirmation. Running through a quick set of hand seals, Shisui slammed his hands on the floor, summoning an above-average-sized crow, think the size of your book bag, into the hospital ward. Shun-san, I need you to find Itachi-san and inform him that there has been an emergency and lead him back here. Also, tell him to bring back the results I was expecting for tomorrow morning. Giving him a nod of consent, the swift messenger crow spread his wings, leaping up and swooping out the window it had blown open in a gust of wind. Riding the currents, it caught into the sky, circling the horizon once as it sensed out its intended target. XXXXX. Naruto awoke to find the first rays of sunshine piercing his eyelids as he finally regained full consciousness. He had floating in and out of cognition for a while now, and seemed to remember snippets of conversation that had been taking place, but it was also hazy and surreal. The images barely coalesced together to even classify as a memorably vivid dream, let alone leave any solid framework that would serve as a reliable memory. Thus, he, not for the first time in his life, wondered where he was, why he was lying there, and how he had gotten there, and, just like all the previous such instances, he came to conclude the very same thing. The absolute whiteness of everything around, coupled with that unmistakable smell of disinfectant, didn't leave him with much room for imagination. He was in the hospital because he got beaten up and wasn't strong enough to get up afterwards, so someone had to haul his ass back here to make sure he didn't end up dead. Probably the Hokage. Well, it was him the last couple of times. He could feel some pain in his shoulder as well as his chest, and checked to see that both were wrapped up in bandages. Slowly, the events that had transpired the previous night became clearer, and he remembered everything from the moment those idiotic villagers had entered his apartment to his final death blow against the Anbu that had attacked him. Bear, it had been him. The same Anbu that had been following and watching him for at least 2 months now. Watching him on the Hokage's orders, no doubt. Had the attack been on the old man's orders as well? Did that even make sense? As he lay there thinking, he could hear 2 pairs of just barely audible footsteps fading into existence as they slowly grew nearer to the door. Hushed voices were soon to follow, till finally, the doorknob turned and the 2 men he had least expected entered the room. "Ah, I see you're finally awake, Naruto." Shisui's eyebrows raised in surprise. Walking in, the 2 took a seat each at the chairs that lined his bedside. It appeared this was not their first visit of the night. "It's good to see you're recovering, Naruto-kun. Care to tell us what happened?" "Sensei. Itachi-ni-san. Why are you guys here? How did I get here?" "Well, Shisui here happened to find you lying unconscious in your home after you failed to show at his house for the dinner he had invited you to," pointed out Itachi. "I'll leave the details of last night's events for you two to work out." "That's what I'd like to know as well, Naruto." Well, 10 minutes later, after a vivid retelling and a series of excited reenactments of his awesome moves, the Jinchuriki's story finally arrived at its conclusion. "So when I realized my shoulder was really gonna be dragging down my mobility, I motioned for an earth clone outside the unidirectionally selective partially permeable barrier to substitute with myself, and since technically, it was an attempt to enter the barrier from the outside, it allowed the initiation of the jutsu, leading to its then uninterrupted completion. Not to mention, of course, that creating barriers that inhibit traveling by space-time jutsu is far beyond my level of knowledge at the moment. Who could have known that young Naruto-kun would have such deep understanding of the inner workings of Fuuin Jutsu? And to have progressed so much in so little an amount of time points towards quite the prodigious talent. He is an Uzumaki after all." The young teen Jounin mused in amazement as he continued to silently listen to the blonde's passionate play-by-play of the night before. Letting out the deep breath he had been maintaining as he told the story, Naruto continued, "After that, I pulverized that Anbu with that combination attack we practiced together. I must say I was mighty impressed with your work. I had to leave behind a shadow clone to deal with the cleanup. Shisui cut in. Kudos to you, young disciple. I may make a fine shinobi of you yet. Having said that though, why do you think Bear was there in the first place? Was it on the Hokage's orders? Or did he have his own vendetta? Asked Naruto, steering the discussion in the direction he felt was most important. That Naruto seems to be the crux of the matter, pointed out Itachi. Bear had been assigned to watch over you for at least 2 months now. He reported only to the Hokage though, so none of us would know the exact details of his assignment. However, what I have been able to discover is that he had been summoned by Hokage-sama last night, though he was not meant to report until 2 nights later. That would imply either specific orders for the night, or a change in the overall mission parameters. The blonde had a contemplative look on his face, and then he asked, but would the Hokage really order my death at the hands of his own Anbu? Well, let's face it, Shisui interjected, it is not uncommon for Kijus to order their own shinobi, even Jinchuriki, especially Jinchuriki, to be assassinated if they feel they are losing control over them, or fear the Jinchuriki has developed into a flight risk. I've heard several such stories about both Suna and Kiri. However, he continued, Sandaime-sama is known to strongly oppose such tactics and is famous for his soft and merciful approach towards others in general. But the evidence that seems to have unfolded over the past couple of months may suggest otherwise. Itachi added, after a short pause, for me, the illusion of a grandfatherly figure has been dispelled, and the image of a powerful dictator that does what he believes is necessary to maintain the integrity of the village all the while keeping up appearances remains. Anyway, so how did you find me? Or rather, why did you find me? Was there something you needed? You were supposed to have dinner with me and Kiyomi-chan last night, remember? He replied with a sweat drop. Huh? Oh yeah. My bad, elaborated Naruto, as he rubbed his head nervously. So the only reason you found me was due to chance? And the only reason you survived, probably. Itachi pointed out, when you got here, you had lost over half the blood in your body. Your sensei here had to give you a transfusion. Which brings us to the topic that both of us are here to discuss. Itachi looked towards Shisui, who nodded for him to continue. Naruto-kun, I need you to channel chakra into our eyes, then look at yourself in here. Handing him a small mirror he picked from the side table. The two Uchiha smirked at each other, counting down in their heads. 3. Receiving the mirror from Itachi, the blonde stared into it as he poured chakra into a cerulean blue orbs, until right before his eyes, they began to morph into something new, a pair of crimson eyes, each containing a single tomoe. 2. Having studied under 2 Uchiha prodigies, he recognized those eyes anywhere. 1. Nin 5. A flock of frightened pigeons burst out of a tree right outside the window, escaping the agonizingly screechy voice of a shocked Naruto. Sensei, somebody implanted me with their Sharingan. Naruto, nobody. I don't want to turn into another scarecrow. I want my baby blues back. Naruto, the eyes are, maybe they did it to frame me, so that the Uchiha clan would take revenge against me for killing one of their own. The blockhead scratched his chin as he struck a contemplative pose, shocked out his sphere of reason. Calm down, Naruto. Shisui intoned, a final warning hidden behind his calm demeanor. Or, maybe it was done as a last-ditch effort to save mankind, by some pure soul that recognized my awesome and realized that only through my efforts could humanity attain salvation. Shut up, Naruto. This is a hospital. Accompanied by a sharp rap on the forehead woke the Jinchuriki up. XXXXX. Somewhere far away, a young, dark-skinned boy with white spiky hair, sneezed, sending the lollipop he had been sucking moments earlier shooting into the face of a young red-headed girl. Amoe, you disgusting jerk. Get back here. As he ran from what could be the cause of his eventual demise, he thought, maybe somebody was thinking of me all as part of an elaborate plan to kill me by making me sneeze all over Karu and then subjecting me to a long and painful death at her hands. XXXXX. Do I have your attention now? A visibly annoyed young Uchiha asked. Hi. I was saying that the Sharingan was awakened in your eyes last night. Itachi and I had come to expect something of the sort. It all began with the manifestation of your latent fire affinity. We could tell that despite your natural affinity being wind, fire somehow was adding itself to the mix in a way that could only mean it was genetic. Though the Uchiha are not the only clan in blood a highly dominant and powerful fire affinity is passed down, the others are nowhere near as famous, populous or likely, as their bloodlines are usually of fire-based Kekkei Genkai, often pertaining to multiple elements. Shisui added, after letting all the information so far to soak in, the second indication of your Uchiha heritage revealed itself when we began your evasion training, soon followed by your weapons practice. I could easily see that your reflexes were faster than most others your age, and your ocular perception was faster and more acute than even several Uchiha. It was then that I spoke with Itachi, not interrupted in the least by the hospitalized shinobi and training's shouts of "I'm awesome." And beat that, team, Itachi picked up from where the other Uchiha had left off. When Shisui brought the issue to my attention, I realized the very real possibility of you having Uchiha blood. I decided to have the matter investigated. Since one of the Anbu operatives under my command is a medical specialist, I asked her to conduct a series of tests on some of your blood, while comparing it to my own. What she found cemented my theory even before your Sharingan was awakened. Though there is no trace of Uchiha genes in from your mother's side, your father's half of your DNA holds quite a striking resemblance, though pure Uchiha DNA seems to have been diluted over the generations. It is no wonder Yondaime-sama was able to perfect the Hiraishin, if he had the heightened sharpness of an Uchiha's eyes, even without the Sharingan. But if my father had Uchiha blood as well, how come he never unlocked the Sharingan? And why did I? Well, I have a theory for that, Shisui said. Rather, this is based off of a piece of research done about a decade ago, by Orochimaru, one of our leading scientific minds and most powerful ninja before he went rogue about 8 years ago. Orochimaru discovered in secret that Uchiha genes favor a much greater number of nerve endings attached to the eyes and quicker relays, leading to higher sensitivity. Also, there is a specific antigen present exclusively in our bloodstream, that bonds with adrenaline to form a red pigmented substance. This substance, when pumped through the arteries supplying the optic nerve, leak out and begin to coat the optic nerve. This is where the red color of the Sharingan originates from. The antigen, however, is only truly formed in someone who has a developed chakra system, and its quantity depends upon the physical fitness of the person's body. That's why, even in stressful situations, civilian Uchiha don't awaken the Sharingan. This research, however, was kept under wraps, and I only know because I was the Anbu one who discovered Orochimaru's notes stashed away in one of his abandoned labs we had discovered shortly after his escape. When Fugaku-sama found out, tensions grew pretty quick with the Hokage, but thankfully a settlement was reached before a coup might have taken place. Anyway, coming back to the topic at hand, I think neither you nor your father had enough Uchiha blood for sufficient quantities of this antigen to be produced. Thus, he never activated the bloodline, though what little he did have was enough to give him heightened visual perception, especially since he trained it so much, to be able to use the Hiraishin as efficiently as he did. The same would have probably happened to you, had you not received a blood transfusion from Shisui here, whose Sharingan has already matured to the highest level, and whose bloodstream is probably already saturated with the antigen in question. This led to the aforementioned process to come to fruition, as, since you had just finished a large-scale fight quite recently, and had been anticipating action for quite some time, there was still a substantial amount of residual adrenaline in your body to complete the procedure. And that's how you have your Sharingan. One more thing though. Before I lost consciousness last night, I registered another presence lingering for a long time just inside the boundary of my proximity alert ward. But the signature was completely alien to me, and I have no idea who it could be. That does seem to be troubling, Itachi started off, but let's see. Do tell us if you notice the chakra signature again. One thing you can be sure of though is this. Whoever it wasn't an ally. Any academy student at such proximity would realize that there was a battle going on in that building, and if he or she didn't come to help, then it stands to reason that this person was in league with your assailant. Continuing, he said, just keep a lookout, and we'll deal with it, hopefully. In the meanwhile, we will not tell Hokage-sama anything. Nobody knows that you came here except for us. The hospital staff is all under a genjutsu. If it was truly him THT ordered the attack, he may slip up and give some indication that it was. You, however, better get your ass in gear and learn how to use that Sharingan. It wouldn't do for Shisui picking up your passed-out body from the ruins of your apartment to become a regular practice, now would it? You're on, sensei. As the two looked at him with a look that said oh, yeah? He added. So does this mean you're gonna start training me for real, Shisui-sensei? No. It means that from now on, your training with me is going to be hell. So does this mean you're gonna start training me for real, Shisui-sensei? No. It means that from now on, your training with me is going to be hell. 30. An old man stood in a light-filled clearing, alert for any semblance of sound. For an entire day, he had had this ominous feeling that he was being followed. A rustling in the bushes, the occasional footstep, an eerie feeling of someone's eyes boring into the back of his neck. But despite his perpetual vigilance and heightened paranoia, his rational mind registered no concrete evidence to lend any validity to his fears. He trudged on, flanked by a pair of his most loyal samurai guards, as they came upon a sudden cliff. The old man and his entourage began to move along the ledge, looking for a way across. In under 10 minutes, a high-hanging rope bridge appeared before the advancing procession, connecting this side of the cliff to the opposite end, running across the entire width of the massive and bottomless ravine. At the foot of the bridge, was a small cabin, fitted on each side with a window. Poking her head out of one of these windows was a figure in blue, displaying quite a rugged appearance. She seemed to be your run-of-the-mill low-born girl, who barely scraped together enough food to eat. Seeing the approaching party, she stepped out of the structure, holding out a hand to stop them. "Sir, 10 ryo for crossing the bridge," her voice, one of desperation. One of the samurai stepped forward, hand resting vigilantly on the hilt of his sword, a threatening pose just hiding behind the corner. "Don't you know who you're speaking to, you insolent girl? Get out of the way." With that, he backhanded the girl out of the way. She stumbled backwards in recoil, but immediately stabled herself. Her gaze was set high, red eyes staring straight into the old man's own. "You dare look at Tatsuhiko Denka in the eyes like this?" A samurai broke out, defending his prince's honor. The old man, now revealed to be of the royal family, though, motioned for the samurai to step back. Seeing the defiant look in the young girl's eyes, he decided he would humor her. Dropping a hand into his pocket, he brought it out, clutching a handful of gold coins, which he scattered onto the bridge. The girl's eyes lit up, seeing the dozens of coins spilling forth onto the rope bridge. Without looking back at the scurrying girl, hurrying to collect as many coins as possible before they rolled off into the ravine below, the princely procession continued on. Having gone only about 20 paces ahead, roughly reaching the center of the bridge, before the royal figure suddenly clutched his chest in pain, stumbling sideways as his body spasmed in agony, a look of fear sitting on his face. The guards in front of and behind him each dove towards him, but it was too late. He was gone. Down he went, dropping like a stone, first striking one outcropping of stone, then bouncing off of another as what was now inevitably a royal corpse faded into oblivion. "You fools! What have you done?" The head of the royal guard stomped into their midst as the samurai and soldiers all scrambled about in disarray. They had failed. 200 of the crown prince's most loyal guards, and they couldn't even save him from toppling over the bridge into the hungry abyss below. Now all that was left was to collect His Highness' body, or whatever remained of it. As the men went marching past, the guards closest to their objective handcuffed and placed under probation for negligence, a puff of smoke revealed a masked figure standing within the confines of the small cabin by the foot of the bridge. He was blonde, of average height. Beside him was another masked young preteen, with jet black hair. He wore on his back a tanto, positioned perfectly for a quick and efficient draw. His eyes were shallow pools, showing absolutely zero emotions. "Cold and efficient as always, senpai." The figure remarked offhandedly, "When it comes to covering up a ruthless assassination as nothing more than an innocent accident, there aren't many that could match you." "Thank you, Saikohai." The Bond figure replied, momentarily going back to his age-old habit of rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. "Anyway, let's get out of here. We still need to cash in that bounty. Hopefully, we can report in by tonight." "As you wish, Yellow, senpai." Racing through a set of brushstrokes on a half-opened scroll, Sai slammed his hand down onto it, summoning a large poof of smoke as an ink bird the size of a car flapped its way out of the residue. In a moment, they were off. 30. Report, Agent Yellow. A stern-looking old man stated robotically, like he had been saying the very same thing for years. The man was a cripple, or at least he appeared to be. Bandages covered the right half of his face, all the way up to and past his eyes. Crisscross scars marked his chin, with lines of age running down his face. His right arm lay wrapped up in bandages. The look of a weak old man was completed by the cane that lay by his desk. The mission was a success, Danzo-sama. The crown prince that was to succeed his father, the daimyo of the Land of Water, is dead. And none of his guards suspected a thing. He fell off of a 100-meter-high bridge, with nothing but sharp rocks and the outdoor equivalent of stalagmites to spear him through at the bottom. Excellent. And what became of Hikaru? We chased him down. We followed him to his base, where I trapped him in a genjutsu, while Sai incarcerated him. After a thorough interrogation and search of his hideout, we found the blueprints to Konoha's security layout, which I have here. He was also in possession of the hero's water he had stolen, which we sealed away. His body was handed over to Takigakure for the bounty. I assume you would have taken a sample of his sperm for our more recent research project. Of course, Miu-chan extracted as much as was possible, then we burned the rest of his genitals before handing over his body as ordered. You may leave us, Sai, Miu. As the two other members of his team walked out the door, the young blonde looked around. It had been over a year and a half since he had first set foot in this room. It hadn't changed one bit. The desk before which Danzo-sama sat remained where they forever were. The same could be said of the lines of shelves lining the walls. Besides the weekly change of security seals, and the possible placement and removal of material from them, they stood tall as ever. Flashback. Naruto strode out of the Uchiha compound as he set out for his apartment after a full day of training with his master. After having gone out far enough to be obscured from any chance guards, or rounds by the military police squads, he recognized a presence behind him. The chakra signature, which he had trained in differentiating, was one he recognized from the night he was attacked 2 days ago, the night he first activated his Sharingan. His paranoia drove him to turning around on the go, turning his head from side to side. Looking around he saw no one, until he heard the sound of a cane tapping on the stone path behind him. The old man had seemed to have materialized out of thin air, a seemingly crippled old man, that is. The man he now turned around to face was covered in bandages engulfing about half his body, yet his posture as well as his presence seemed to exude an element of power. Naruto recognized him as one of the elders that could be seen meeting with the Sandaime, and if he remembered correctly, one of Iruka-sensei's history lessons had covered him and his contributions to the Leaf, in addition to his current role as an advisor to the Hokage. "I've long wished to meet you, young man." He finally broke the silence that had ensued while the blonde eyed him up. "You're Danzo-san, right? One of Hokage-sama's advisors?" He spoke in a tone laced with respect. "You would be correct. I am indeed Danzo, and I come to you with a proposition." "A proposition? What sort of proposition? And who is that you have hiding in the trees up there?" "Splendid. The boy can sense rat from over here at such a young age, even though he isn't suppressing his chakra. It seems that the reports about Shisui putting extra hours into this kid hold some merit to them." "Ah, that's just my bodyguard. You may come out now, rat." A young adult emerged from the foliage, an animal mask on his face. "A non-bodyguard?" the boy replied skeptically. "Not precisely." The old man allowed a smile to grace his features. The conversation was going exactly where he wanted it to, without him even needing to prompt it in the right direction. "He is part of my own branch of Black Ops that serve Konoha from the darkness. We do what must be done to ensure the continued existence and prosperity of the village, things that most people have neither the power nor the stomach to do. That brings me to why I'm here, wishing to speak to you in particular. I want to offer you a place in this organization." Naruto wasn't an idealist. He knew what kind of dirty underhanded dealings and backstabbing took place between nations, and that the sort of image that Konoha as a whole and the Hokage in particular had constructed for themselves was nothing but an illusion aimed at the naive masses. So he had no problems with doing whatever it took to preserve what you want to preserve. "What's in it for me?" "I know about your heritage. I know about your Sharingan. I know that deep down, you want to have some sort of connection with your parents, you want to fight for the village they died for. I also know that relationships between yourself and the Hokage have become strained. The Hokage's grandfather, like facade, has shattered, and left you feeling confused about yourself, the village, the Hokage and what you want to do about it. I offer you a place where no one will question you. A place where your heroic acts in defense of the village will be appreciated. A place where your instruction in the shinobi arts will not be purposefully hampered. I know that you've discovered your elemental nature to be wind, and you have no one to learn it from. I offer you lessons on taming your wind affinity, being a practitioner of it myself." The man had done his homework, it seemed. Despite the incriminating evidence all alluding to the fact that Danzo, now Danzo-sama, had agents spying on him for quite a lot of the recent past, Naruto found himself nodding along. The offer seemed to be everything he could ask for, and he had been baited to success. Hook, line and sinker. Flashback. "And how fares your training, Naruto?" This had become very much a monthly question. And his answer had gained a consistent format. "My Sharingan training is going well. Shisui-sensei has me busy dodging an unimaginable number of kunai and shuriken, and I've also advanced well into predictive countering. I've mastered most of the interceptor fist style, and I'm regularly practicing with him in taijutsu." "As you asked, I've had several sessions with Itachi-san concerning ocular genjutsu, and I must say, his expertise in the field is phenomenal. I've merely just scratched the surface. His brand of genjutsu is so insanely exhausting. I don't think I managed to throw off a single one of them without intervention from Shisui-sensei." Hearing this, his superior's face grew somber, as if he was about to relay some serious piece of news. "About your sensei," the old man broke off. The blonde broke out of his jovial tone as he saw what was most obviously a solemn conversation. "I have an assignment for you, Naruto," Danzo declared calmly. Hearing this, his superior's face grew somber, as if he was about to relay some serious piece of news. "About your sensei," The old man broke off. The blonde broke out of his jovial tone as he saw what was most obviously a solemn conversation. "I have an assignment for you, Naruto," Danzo declared calmly. 30. His heart thumped heavily as he raced across the village, desperately pleading whatever powers were out there that he wasn't too late. Naruto Uzumaki poured as much chakra as he could into his legs as he leapt from rooftop to rooftop, crossing over several districts, passing by a dozen training grounds, and traversing the length of the village in the most tense 5 minutes of his life as he rushed to save his mentor. 10 minutes ago, when his superior at Ruta dismissed his teammates and asked that he remain behind, he had been expecting nothing out of the ordinary. After all, he was special. He knew that, and he wasn't shy of admitting it. Container of the QB, son of the Yondaime Hokage, secret bearer of the Sharingan, last Uzumaki of Konoha, yeah. He was special. It was completely usual for Danzo to ask for him to remain behind, either because he had taken a direct interest in his training himself, or because he wanted to discuss sensitive information that couldn't be disclosed before the others. After all, no one, and absolutely no one but Danzo and Shisui knew of his involvement with Root. To the other operatives working under the man, Naruto was just another child he had picked up and seen potential in. Naruto was merely Agent Yellow, and in the near future, it appeared it would stay that way. However, after their regular game of 20 questions about everything to do with his training, the conversation shifted over to something far more serious. Danzo had decreed that Uchiha Shisui had begun to show resentment towards the village, and not just against the Hokage or his policies either. Not that Naruto would believe it though. Shisui loved the village of his birth, and loved the people that inhabited it. As far as he could infer, Danzo himself had approached the man to make him work under him to help the village since he disagreed with how the Hokage was running things, and that hadn't gone as smoothly as one could have hoped. More than likely, this was no more than that rite of passage that Rudanbu had to undergo. Danzo had merely waited until he found the person whose death would be the most useful to himself. Nothing was certain though, but that seemed to be most probable. Anyhow, Shisui would be returning from a solo mission he had undertaken any time now, and the decision had been made to eliminate him. A squad of some of Root's most experienced and talented Anbu had already taken up positions to ambush him. Everything had been set up so that there was no avenue of escape. His teacher of 2 years was possibly the only person he had truly grown to respect in this godforsaken village. The way he was kind to people, whether he knew them or not, how he would make sure not to cause pain to any living thing, let alone another human being, how he had treated him, even though everyone else in the village had given him nothing but scorn. He had trained him and bonded with Naruto like one would with family. He pretty much was family. This type of bond, the Jinchuriki had formed with no one else. Not the Hokage, who in his infinite wisdom, had left the blonde to fend for himself, all the while not so subtly encouraging him to earn the villagers' respect, like he himself had managed all those years ago. And it had worked too, for a short while. Naruto Uzumaki had been completely indoctrinated, set upon the path of becoming Hokage and protecting the village, until he saw the fruitlessness of his endeavors. Good thing he didn't continue to persist along that line. Ever since he made up his mind though, his relationship with the Sandaime degenerated into nothing more or less than cordial. His relationship with Danzo was a whole different sort though. From the very get-go, Naruto had known what to expect. There was no emotional meandering involved nor required. It would be a strictly professional relationship. He would perform a number of missions for the old man, and in return, he would receive one-on-one training from the man himself as well as access to his sizable jutsu archives. Purely give or take. It was here that Naruto felt most comfortable. A place where he needed only one mask, the mask of a shinobi, one he knew how to don well. From the very beginning, Naruto had known that Danzo would not be a friend. Neither did he want him as an enemy though. Danzo's true usefulness to those who either worked with him or for him was that of a most convenient business partner. His case wasn't much different. Aside from Danzo, the Hokage, Shisui, Itachi, Sasuke, Kiyomi, and the Icarus, there weren't many people with whom he had any worthwhile relationship. Hatake Kakashi would make the occasional visit though, asking about his training and offering pointers himself. And then of course, there was that nice weapons shop owner who he had set up his first contract with. A lifetime of restockable supply of kunai, shuriken, explosive tags, ninja clothing, armor, wire, swords, chakra metal, you name it, as long as he kept getting his monthly 5,000 explosive notes, and 500 sealing scrolls. Raw material provided by the store of course. In the blonde's own humble opinion though, he himself had gotten the better end of the deal. Little did the poor man know that when Naruto Uzumaki got up to abusing the Shadow Clone Jutsu, a jutsu which Shisui-sensei had taught him soon after realizing how massive his chakra reserves were bound to be one day, Heck, how massive they already were. For him, creating the specified number of notes was a walk in the park. Coming back to the present, however, Naruto was almost at the edge of the village, nearing the forest where the ambush was to take place. From the sounds of it though, it seemed that the trap had already been sprung. He put on a final burst of speed as he entered the final leg of his urgent dash. He had been tasked with smiting the final blow to his master, and retrieving his eyes, lest they fall into the wrong hands. And those wouldn't be your hands, by any chance, would they? He thought. Naruto was confused. He was not ready in any situation to cut off his bonds with his master and kill him, well, not for Danzo at least. Nor was he deluded enough to believe Danzo would spare him once he caught any whiff of betrayal from one of his subordinates. For now though, he needed to get there, fast, and assess the situation. It may be that he could pass this situation off as an impossible mission and salvage whatever he could from the situation. Sharingan blaring, he moved into position behind a tree, such that he could see what was going on inside the clearing. It wasn't pretty. The trees around seemed to have taken the brunt of a fight that had been going on for quite some time. Some were burning, while others were knocked over. Others yet, held large gouges on their hefty trunks, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. In the clearing, 2 Onba lay dead, while sounds of clashing weapons and chakra flares erupted from the foliage about 50 feet away. Naruto silently approached the 2, clad in his Onba gear, and checked them each for a pulse. Seeing one of them still alive, just barely holding on to dear life, he strangled his neck, and then moved on to where the battle still ensued. Shisui was putting up one hell of a fight. Even he hadn't expected 2 operatives to actually die on the mission, especially such highly efficient Onbu when they had the drop on him, but then again, this was Uchiha Shisui he was talking about. Despite having lines of blood running down his face, from a wound in his forehead where his opponent's sword must have penetrated, he was still standing, waving his own tanto about. One side of his face was blackened, seemingly from a raten jutsu, and parts of his clothing were tied over his shoulder, as a bandage of sorts. 20 minutes ago, Shisui was running back to Konoha at a respectable speed, not very fast, for a ninja that is, but still fast enough to be far beyond the reach of any civilian. He wanted to be home by tonight and have a nice soak, and maybe spend some time with his adorable little sister and her not-so-secret crush in the form of his child prodigy of a student, Naruto Uzumaki. His student had been making great strides in improving his skills ever since he had accepted to take him on as his apprentice. Working on his taijutsu daily, he could now comfortably say that there was barely a chunin out there that could match him in a test of physical prowess. When it came to ninjutsu, well, a few jounin couldn't even keep up. With Naruto's drive, as well as his monstrous chakra capacity, not to mention his recovery rate, both from exhaustion as well as injuries, and more recently, his use of shadow clones, he managed to cut down the standard jutsu learning time several times. Of course, ever since he had awakened his Sharingan, that learning curve had only grown steeper. He could now pick up techniques after having seen them only once, and after some time practicing them, could quite truthfully claim he had mastered them. Having seen a clearing before him, he thought he would take a short 5-minute break there before continuing on with the journey. When he arrived though, he noticed something off about the place. It was too quiet. No rustling in the bushes, no animals hooting or scurrying about. It was dead quiet. He got on his guard. He stood there for several seconds, but there was nothing. Dismissing it as no more than a mere figment of his imagination, Shisui was about to sit down, before he decided to check once more by activating his Sharingan. The Sharingan afforded the ninja a whole new sense of perception, a whole new world of feeling as he saw the trees towering above him, laced in chakra as they too hummed in delight, completely in tune with nature. Wait a minute. That wasn't the same color or density as the chakra of plant life. Kai. Hurriedly whispering the words as his dojutsu shattered the expertly woven illusion into pieces, Shisui was just in time to duck and dodge sideways as a massive current of heavenly proportions zapped past his face. He wasn't nearly fast enough though, as the powerful bolt of electrical discharge glanced off of the left side of his face, leaving him at the hands of agonizingly drawn-out torture as each cell on one half of his face and underneath it screamed out in rebellion, howling in torment. Biting back a curse as stars blinked in and out before his vision, it was all he could do to lean back to avoid an oncoming fireball jutsu, and spin around and kick out at the mysterious assailant that appeared behind him. The masked man was launched back, hitting his head on a low-hanging branch, his neck snapping forward with a violent jerk. Shisui drew his tanto, and 2 seconds later, had plunged it deep within the brains of a now very dead and crimson-dyed corpse. In the meanwhile, his 2 masked accomplices had not idle. A violent gust of wind blew, accompanied by fire which was stoked and kindled by the blowing winds, evolving into a blazing inferno that ate up all that was in its path. Despite having singed part of his arms and burned off the lower half of his sleeves as he blocked off the brunt of the attack, all the while jumping backwards, Shisui had finally managed to gain enough time to make stock of the situation. 3 enemies so far. 1 dead, leaving 2 enemies that he knew for sure were lying in wait, while there remained the possibility of a 4th squad member biding his time, waiting for the most opportune time to strike. Shisui engaged the one who seemed to be the leader in a battle of kenjutsu, while searching the field for the other man. He couldn't shift his focus off of his current opponent for long though, not more than a couple seconds, else he would be disarmed and subdued. Despite his own considerable skill, his enemy was no pushover either, while the two duked it out with a slash here, a parry there, a stab here, a dodge there, a counter-strike there, and another parry there. He realized that he was at a disadvantage. The masked Anbu, who he could recognize as wearing the uniform of Root, had managed to keep him occupied in a battle of kenjutsu, leaving him unable to make hand seals for jutsu, while his other partners seemed to be lying in wait, ready to strike. Deciding that dealing with the possible interloper was the more imminent need, he disengaged from the Root captain and retreated into the bushes, whereby his enemy too disappeared. Concentrating his Sharingan onto the bushes around him, he could see 2 chakra sources surrounding him. One, closer than even he had first assumed. Damn! These Anbu sure are stealthy. A quick buildup of chakra later and Shisui stepped out from behind the foliage, unleashing a vacuum sphere jutsu on the unsuspecting target behind the bush. Or so it appeared. Ha! You've left yourself wide open. And with that, he shot out of the bush, another bolt of lightning he had seemingly been building up erupting from his hands, impacting Shisui point blank. A look of pain crossed his features, before a smirk set in. A cloud of smoke and popping sound the only warning the man got before he too was skewered through the lungs with Shisui's tanto. A water bullet headed in his direction. The Uchiha had no time to confirm his kill as he put forward a hasty retreat, disappearing back into the forest. Normally, he would have tried to reason or talk his way out of such a situation, but from the very beginning, he had known that they were Root Anbu. They neither talked nor compromised. They merely completed the mission, or died trying. And despite his vehement distaste for Danzo and his methods, he had to admit, they were pretty damn effective. Back to the present, Shisui dodged to the left as the squad captain attacked once more, a downward vertical slash of his katana, followed by a diagonal slash as he spun around, giving no time to recover. Shisui brought his tanto in front of him in a guard, pushing back against his opponent to create room for himself. His Sharingan had allowed him to continue evading the Anbu's strikes for so long. Otherwise his reflexes had dulled several long minutes ago, especially since he was exhausted after the solo A-rank bounty he had just subdued an hour earlier, followed by his long run home. His chakra had yet to recharge back up to favorable levels when he was suddenly set upon by a team of highly skilled combatants, one of who had been an Aburame, whose bugs had juiced him for all he was worth until he could bring an end to him. This final Anbu, however, seemed to be quite well versed in terms countering the Uchiha fighting style. He absolutely refused to look him in the eye, minimally telegraphed his movements, and looked to overcome his opponent with pure speed and power. Well, he wasn't too successful on that front. He was known as Shisui of the Sunshine for reason, but even then, his chakra reserves had gone dangerously low, and he couldn't afford to be so prodigal with his use of his signature technique any longer. He would have to make do with the basics. His opponent, on the other hand, did not have the same restriction. He had not been flinging jutsu left and right, and so, was in relatively better condition. There was also the chance that a 4th member of their squad might be lurking somewhere in the shadows, since most squads tended to consist of 4, not 3 members. It was here that Naruto arrived at the scene, jumping into the clearing the combatants had selected for themselves. He turned towards the Anbu, nodding once, then preparing for battle. He would wait for his chance, then strike at him when he least expected it. Shisui had been fighting for quite some time now, and he was tired. He was also pretty sure that this had gone on long enough to attract attention from Konoha. Someone would be coming to check out what was going on. On the reverse side, it could just as easily be an enemy come see what was taking so long. So the moment he spotted an Anbu masked figure jumping out of the tree line, and nodding to the other Anbu, he set into motion. Despite all his misgivings, Shisui knew he couldn't play it safe. He would have to risk it all in a last-ditch effort to kill the Anbu if he himself wished to survive. Completing the hand seals in a split second, he summoned a crow the size of a human being, and then continued on going through hand seals, indicating to his partner while on the run. Cutting an abrupt end to his opponent's momentary reprieve, he came to a stop on the tiger seal, blowing out a grand fireball jutsu flying straight in the direction of his would-be assassin. Not losing a step, Shisui flung himself to the right of where his enemy stood, already anticipating where he would retreat as his crow partner soared in from the left. He wasn't mistaken. With the Anbu exactly where he wanted him, he struck out with a stab to his heart. However, the speed at which the two were moving, coupled with a last-minute jerk by the Anbu squad captain meant that he did not hit his mark, instead impaling his sword into his shoulder. He groaned loudly, but he wasn't finished yet. As a reflex, the injured enemy lashed out, penetrating with his katana, straight through his gastro-abdominal cavity. His own tanto fixed firmly in the man's shoulder, Shisui could do nothing but watch as the sword slipped into him, eliciting a cry of pain from the Uchiha. Louder still, was the cry of anguish that erupted from nearby as a yellow blur shot across the clearing, lopping off the Anbu captain's head in his moment of relief. Immediately, he was at his master's side, having done away with his mask, a panic-stricken look on his face as he pulled out the sword that gripped the inside of Shisui's stomach. "Sensei. Hold on, I'll get you to the hospital." Evidently not having expected the new arrival to have been his student, he looked up in shock. "It's me, Sensei." "Naruto." "Naruto? What are you doing here?" "Danzo wants you killed. I rushed here as quickly as I could." "Just relax. I'll get you to the Uchiha compound. It's the closest from here. Surely, Akino-san will be able to fix everything." "Very well then." Picking up his master's body with extreme care and gentleness, Naruto began his run back towards Konoha. As he moved, the blonde continued to narrate what had happened and how he had come to be at the forest. "Sensei?" "Yes?" "Could I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did Danzo claim that you were becoming disloyal and a threat to the village?" "I don't know. Maybe because I spoke up against the Hokage and the elders when they tried to pretend that you were being treated like a princess and everything was fine and innocent in their perfect little Konoha." "You really did that?" "Well, anyway. Knowing Danzo, it's probably because he knows about my Sharingan abilities, especially Koto Amatsukami, a technique that could look deep into a person's desires, and subtly strengthen one so greatly that he believes in it absolutely, all the while under the assumption that he had arrived at the conclusion after lots of pondering and contemplation. Inception in its most pristine form. A sort of mind control if you will. He has probably tasked you with retrieving my eyes, has he not?" A moment of hesitation, then with a sigh, he replied, "Yes, Sensei. What should I do?" But it seemed that Shisui was no longer paying attention to what he was saying. He coughed, then a deep breath, then he sighed. "Let me down, Naruto." "We're halfway there, Sensei. Just hang on for 10 more minutes." "No, I'm afraid I will not survive the night. My wounds are fatal, and my body will not hold out till you arrive at the village. Even now, my stomach acids continue to empty out into my chest cavity, burning a hole right through my body. It won't be long before even the mobility and speech I possess at this moment deserts me. Let me down now, so that I may give you my final instructions as a sensei." Naruto didn't want to comply. He wanted to keep running, and hoped that he would reach the Uchiha clan district on time. But seldom did just wishing for something ever make it come true. If his sensei, who was optimistic at the worst times, was saying he wouldn't survive, then he very likely wouldn't survive. Stopping at the trunk of an inconspicuous tree, he laid his sensei down. "Complete your mission. These eyes are of no more use to me. Make sure to use them to ensure your continued existence as a root operative until you graduate. But, don't interrupt me. Bring out your medical instruments and kit. Also, a significant chakra signature approaches. Don your mask once more." And then he continued to whisper his final instructions into his ear. A heavy feeling descended onto his heart, as the blonde obeyed without question. He steadied his shaking hands as he prepared to make the fine incisions he would need to make to remove the eye unimpeded, and with minimal damage. He had practiced this weeks ago with Danzo for emergency situations, where he may need to apply first aid or administer an eye transplant. It was only now that he realized why this particular surgery had been chosen for him to learn. That bastard had this planned for weeks. "If only I had been faster, if I hadn't hesitated," he murmured. As he stored the Sharingan eye in a jar he then sealed away into a scroll, he heard rustling in the bushes, and then a pair of Sharingan eyes stepped out from behind the tree. "Who is there?" When he saw the figure, he knew Itachi would slaughter him before he even had time to reveal his identity. It was then that Naruto Uzumaki bolted. A young blonde boy sat with his head resting on the backs of his interlocked fingers, lost in thought. So much had happened in so little a while, it felt almost surreal. Just a month ago, everything had been normal, or as normal as things could have been, given how the village continued to ostracize him for something far beyond his control. But of course, he had learned to ignore them long ago. They were beneath him. And he was above giving a damn. He continued to learn under the tutelage of his mentor, and teacher, and dare he say it, the person he could say came closest to being considered his friend, and then, it was all wiped out in a heartbeat. Danzo, The commander of Root, the Black Ops organization he had joined in order to gain experience in the practical world and hone his skills, had sent him to retrieve the eyes of his master, the fabled eyes of Uchiha Shisui, eyes that had grown legendary for their ability to cast Koto Amatsukami, one of the most powerful genjutsu of all time. He himself had merely heard of its capabilities, through tales that his master had regaled him with. He had poured all his power into arriving on time, but alas, he was too late. He could do nothing but watch on as Shisui lay dying, and as his teacher breathed his last, comply with his last wishes and desecrate his eyes. He had escaped when he realized Itachi had arrived on the scene, and left the elder Uchiha to take care of the body. He was cowardly, immensely so, but he had done it. He had handed over those legendary eyes to his commanding officer. He had proven his loyalty to Root, above all else. In the eyes of Danzo, he had finally broken all bonds of fellowship, and breezed through his rite of passage. He was now a full member of the Black Ops, but his heart wasn't in it. After that, it was one piece of bad news after the other. Soon, the Uchiha had all retreated into their compound, barring him and anyone else from entering, and the next morning, the adults were all found dead, with all evidence pointing towards his other friend, Itachi, as the culprit. He was confused. He didn't understand why Itachi would have, or even could have done this. Sasuke was left as nothing but a shell of his former self for days on end. By the time he recovered, he had become obsessed with revenge, spending day in and day out training, in preparation for the day he would finally unleash his sorrow upon the brother that had shattered his utopia and slain his parents, leaving only some of the Uchiha children alive, with him being one of the oldest. Without any adult guardians to look over them, they had become easy pickings for anyone who wanted to get their hands on some Uchiha blood. In the first day alone, there had been no less than 24 kidnapping attempts, nearly half of which were successful. He personally knew of at least 4 young Uchiha children that had been picked up by Root, who, had things been any different, he would have had to train. However, today was the graduation exam, and in about a week, he would be assigned to his Junon team. Good thing too. He couldn't bear to work any longer with Danzo. The man was atrocious, killing loyal men just to gain more power. Well, he may have done the same, had the situations been reversed, but then who gave him, and Sarutobi, and every other freaking group in Konoha the moral high ground to claim that they worked for the betterment of the village, or to establish peace among the lands? No, they all merely endeavored to consolidate their power base is all. And then, they called it the greater good. At least the other villages weren't so hypocritical about it. It was only when the total Uchiha population of the village had dropped into the single digits that the Hokage woke up from his neglectful stupor, and arranged for anyone not yet a ninja to be adopted by a shinobi family, clan, while the Junon were forbidden from living alone. Sasuke and Kiyomi, along with 2 other Junon, were all the ninja that were left of the once mighty Uchiha clan, and Itachi, of course, but his very name had become taboo. And him, but then, the number of people who knew that could be counted on one hand. Naruto was broken out of his thoughts when the door slammed open, as 2 of the greatest annoyances known to man barged into the doorway simultaneously, each one trying to push the other out of the way as she placed her foot into the classroom. In the end, it was Sakura that came out victorious, and the second round of pink versus blonde electrostatic glaring commenced. Naruto would have ignored the duo had they not been racing over to where he sat the very next second, foregoing their earlier rivalry to put up a united front in the face of the daunting figure of their whiskered classmate who had usurped their rightful place beside their beloved. Despicable. The very sight of such pathetic individuals whose days were squandered vying for the attention of a boy who had made it plain for all to see that he wasn't interested occupying the position of top kunoichi of the year disgusted him. It just went on to show how truly worthless this place had become. Not that he cared, of course. On the seat beside him sat his longtime friend and training partner, who he had won over the day he had first defeated him in a spar at his clan compound. Sasuke Uchiha, hailed as a genius, one of the last known wielders of the Sharingan in Konoha, tied for top in everything with the blonde, was brooding. Over the past weeks, his mood had grown ever worse, with Naruto as the only one who could ever cause him to cheer up. Even then, not for long. Only while training did he truly feel free, for he knew that with each moment he spent in the training field, he was drawing ever closer to his ambition. To finally killing that man. Before the 2 female menaces could get their clamor going once more, the entire class immediately froze as a giant head, bloated way out of proportion, suddenly filled the space between the teacher's desk and the ceiling, a shrill exasperated shout emanating from within. Quiet. And lo and behold, there was silence. 2 Chunin stood at the front of the class. To the right, was their head instructor, Iruka, a man with dark eyes and brown hair that he kept back in a ponytail. A scar running across the bridge of his nose formed one of his most well-known defining characteristics. By his side, stood his assistant Mizuki, a man with green eyes and white, shoulder-length hair, with a hint of blue mixed into it. Having garnered the class's attention, Mizuki walked over to the door and slammed it closed, just as a bell rang in the background, signaling the start of what for many would be the last day of the academy before the term break, and for others, would be the day of their graduation exam, and possibly the day they became shinobi in full. A pair of heads could be seen peeking into the classroom from outside the door, undoubtedly tardy students that couldn't arrive before the doors were closed. Pathetic. To think they thought they could be shinobi. As the teacher passed out the exam, he could tell that he would pass, hands down. The level of difficulty that this test posed was no greater than what he had grown accustomed to over the years, absolutely pitiful. An hour later, he walked out of the academy building, donning a leaf hitate across his forehead. Hopefully, he would never have to return. He felt no pride in putting on the symbol of the leaf, which, years ago, had been a dream. He was past that now. No, this was no more than the means to an end. As he began his trek back home, he sensed a presence watching him. Coming to a stop where he stood, he looked behind him to see no one. He continued on, as if nothing unusual was afoot, and entered into the small set of trees that bore proximity to his position. Once he was confident that he was beyond range of any potential watcher's gaze, he waited. Moments later, Mizuki emerged from behind the academy building, making his way towards a young boy whose sullen expression as he swung back and forth in the playground revealed that he had failed his graduation test. It was a pity too. Sado was a really hard-working boy. Despite being an orphan, he had managed to scrape by outside of the academy, and for a short while, had been Naruto's only friend, long before the blonde had begun to leave his peers behind in the dust. Naruto had even taught him his sexy jutsu, which, he had newly come up with at the time, and which Sado had continued to make use of as pranking material, much to the ire of Iruka-sensei. Of course, they had slowly drifted apart as the Jinchuriki gained new priorities to his life, and his old life became relatively insignificant. What Naruto now held for the boy could no longer be termed friendship, nor any sense of attachment for that matter, but he could relate. He could empathize with the difficulties of a fellow victim of the same system, and wish him well as a final statement of defiance against the people of Konoha and what they represented. Of course, he wouldn't go out of his way to help him either. The blonde himself had excelled on the basis of his merits alone, and Sado would have to do the same. If he failed, then he wasn't worth his time anyway. However, Naruto knew the kind of person Mizuki was. He trampled on anyone he could, especially if he knew they couldn't fight back, and that is what made him wary of the man in the first place. Seeing the sinister smile on his face when he approached the young boy, he knew something was up. Sado, on the other hand, was far too meek and innocent to realize the malintent that his instructor reeked of. And so, it was no surprise when the boy's face lit up like it was his birthday. Definitely a dastardly plot to humiliate the boy even further, and gain something for himself out of it. And so, it was curiosity that led Naruto Uzumaki out that night, following after Mizuki from the shadows as a cage bunshine of his trailed Sado. Soon, he realized what the plan was. While Mizuki led all the village Anbu on a wild goose chase, posing as a rogue Kirinin, Sado infiltrated the Hokage Tower to steal a large scroll. A scroll that he recognized on sight. The forbidden scroll of sealing. The naive young boy ran, and Naruto's clone followed. Pretty useful technique, that cage bunshine was, all thanks to Shisui, his soul rest in peace. Meanwhile, it was interesting to see how Mizuki threw off his chasers by discarding his clothing, dropping his henge, and reporting to the nearest Anbu team for duty. Conveniently enough, the Black Ops leader assigned him to search in precisely the location he needed to be, where Sado was waiting. By the time he got there though, he realized he had been bested by Iruka, who had gotten hold of both Sado and the scroll before him. Damn those Anbu for detaining him longer than necessary. Mizuki readied his Fuuma Shuriken, and let loose with a violent throw at the boy. At the last second, Iruka leapt up at the oncoming missile, defending the boy with his back. His body speared through with a foot-long blade, Iruka crumpled to the ground. Oh, how he knew this would happen. How he had anticipated this very turn of events. Those emotional fools could be so predictable sometimes. Mizuki had known that Iruka was the only threat there. And were it not for the time limit, even he was not much of a challenge. The boy could be dealt with at any time. And so it was, that with pinpoint accuracy, his kunai descended into the Chunin instructor's neck, putting him to his final rest. As Mizuki jumped down to the forest floor, Sado took hold of the giant scroll tightly, not willing to let go of the valuable object that his teacher had given his life trying to protect. Mizuki towered over the boy's cowering form as he extended his hand over the scroll. Boy. No way. Iruka-sensei died to protect this scroll. You lied to me. I won't let you have it, Sato exclaimed, as he retreated, crawling. It surprised Naruto how the kind and soft-spoken boy he knew seemed to have grown a backbone. Perhaps there was some hope for him yet. Then you can die too protecting it. Say hello to Iruka for me, would you? With that, he body flickered over to the boy's position and plunged his kunai downwards. However, instead of the soft flesh he had expected, it was a solid, unwavering tanto that his blade impacted with. Naruto had jumped in at the last second, deciding to spare his childhood friend one last try at making something of his life. Not wanting to lose the element of surprise that he still held, the blonde let loose a powerful sidekick into Mizuki's stomach, sending him careening into the foliage behind him. Sato released a quiet sigh of relief as he discovered the identity of his last-minute savior. He had been practicing with the shadow clone jutsu for half an hour, and he was dead on his feet. Even now, he had been going on sheer adrenaline, else he would have succumbed to unconsciousness 15 minutes ago. The technique required a monstrous amount of chakra, and despite him having more chakra than several of his peers, barring some of the clan kids and Naruto of course, he was nowhere near prepared for the amount that the Cage Bunshine demanded. Only forming one clone, with varying levels of success, had lowered his reserves to dangerously low levels. Seeing one more capable than himself entering the playing field, his eyes grew heavy as nature took its due course. Within seconds, he was asleep. It didn't take long for Mizuki to get back up, ready to exact retribution on the one who decided he could mess with him when he was on a tight schedule. And that kick hurt too. But all this while, Naruto wasn't sitting idle either. The moment Mizuki emerged from the cover the trees provided him, he was forced to dodge to the left as a flight of shuriken came his way. Jumping to the side, he pulled out a kunai from his weapons pouch, deflecting the second and third volley of projectiles that came soaring his way. The Kyuubi brat. The kid that had been the cause of several dozen headaches back in the day, just before spontaneously going quiet and apparently repenting from his prankfully wayward ways. Regardless, he remained a victim of his loathing and ill feelings. The boy was a symbol of all that he had lost, his uncle, cousin, and, all lost at the hands of the walking natural disaster that was the demon fox. He had, for years, wished he could get back at it somehow, make it feel the misery it had inflicted upon him, make it somehow experience his pain, and the only way he knew how was through its container. And if he killed the container, the fox's spirit too would be snuffed out, or at least that's how it should work. And now, the very same individual who needn't do much to earn his ire in the first place, stood in his way to success, to power beyond his wildest dreams. How fortunate that he could kill two birds with one stone. Same bird, really. As he parried the weapons that rained down upon him, he jumped up to a tree branch above him and returned fire with his signature Fuuma Shuriken, a glint of steel revealing the shinobi-grade wire that trailed behind. Naruto dodged the giant weapon and leapt upwards, pushing through the air with a futon. Repoussé. As Newton's third law ran its course, Naruto rocketed through the air in pursuit of his target, zigzagging like a deflating balloon. In a matter of seconds, he was upon the academy instructor, a wind chakra-enhanced kunai clasped firmly in the reverse grip typical of shinobi. Of course, Mizuki never knew that. So it came as a debilitating surprise when the kunai he had put up to block the Jinchuriki's blow was sliced through like paper, leaving a deep gash running down his forearm. He leveled the blonde with an irate look as he pulled. It was only thanks to his heightened reflexes honed by extensive training with his Sharingan that Naruto knew he had to duck. Even then, he merely escaped by a hair's width as Mizuki's wire-controlled giant shuriken erupted from the place he stood just moments before. Without missing a beat, Naruto spun around with a rising kick to Mizuki's chin, propelling him off of the branch the two stood on. Not willing to give his former teacher a moment of reprieve, he shot off behind him. Naruto knew that he was up against someone with many more years of experience under his belt than he himself did, but that did not worry him. He had dealt with many a Chunin before, and even held his own against Jounin, though he couldn't say he had bested many. Nevertheless, in his honest, if not humble, opinion, Mizuki did not pose much of a threat. What worried him though was the fact that other Konoha shinobi could arrive any minute now, and he needed to be over with this fight before they did. Otherwise, he would not only have to reveal his skills to the Hokage, but also would lose this perfect opportunity to get his hands on the forbidden scroll of sealing, an object of monumental importance. After all, it had been a depository of the knowledge of some of the greatest shinobi to walk the land of fire, if not the entire continent. And so it was, that Mizuki, who had barely recovered from the blonde upstart's kick to the chin, found himself staring into a burning ball of fire that flew into his path. With no way to avoid it however smart bastard he was forced to Kawarimi with a nearby boulder. However, it appeared that the brat had anticipated the maneuver, for a violent gale of wind blasted him off his feet as he went flying once more. Where is all this power coming from? He never exhibited such proficiency during any of his spars. It seems I'll have to turn things up a notch. That was his last thought before his back was slammed into the trunk of a gigantic tree. Oh, he would be sore tomorrow morning. Momentarily dazed, the man was too late to evade the Katen, Ryuken no Jutsu, fire release, dragon flame technique, that followed. As the smoke from the explosion began to fade, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. His Sharingan still blaring, he couldn't afford being caught unaware at this point. He walked over to the slumped form of Sato, who held the scroll tightly to his chest, despite having already fallen unconscious long ago. It said much for the boy's sense of determination that he continued to hold fast to his objective, even subconsciously. Regardless, it was no tall task for the blonde to pry it out of his clutches into his own eagerly awaiting hands. Had the time and place been appropriate, he would have let out a sinister cackle, to mark his successful procurement of such a sought-after article. He immediately sealed it into a maze-like seal tattooed onto his upper forearm, ready to make himself scarce. Fate, though, seemed to have other things in mind as an explosion of chakra from under the charred remains of the tree he had lain waste to was witness to the fact that his adversary had not truly been defeated. Out of the destruction emerged a tall, robust individual that he could barely recognize as his teacher. For years, he had gained a wild and feral look, the visible portions of his body covered in tiger-like stripes. But most importantly, his chakra felt different. Much more dense and powerful, vile. Delicious. His Sharingan flared back into life as he observed the man turn beast. A layer of purple chakra covered his body, a similar colored aura permeating the air above him. Mizuki felt like he was living for the first time. The sheer amount of chakra running through his tenketsu was phenomenal. He felt invincible, unbeatable. No one could dare challenge him now. He would give the QB brat what had been long coming, and then, he would escape with the scroll. This was the fruit of working for Orochimaru-sama and leaving his pathetic friends behind, and it was just as sweet as he was promised. Soon, he would be the holder of power beyond what anyone in that shithole of a village could ever dream of, and then there would be payback. He'd serve them their just desserts for treating him like he was expendable. And of course, he couldn't forget the money either. He'd finally be able to settle down with Tsubaki and convince her to come live with him in Otogakure. I underestimated the brat earlier. This time, I won't make the same mistake. With that, he pounced on the blonde unexpectedly, knocking him over to the ground as he stood over his spread-eagled body. The strength flowing through his arms was wonderful. With one strike he had downed his opponent, and this next one would be the final blow. Raising his bloated arm high into the air, he brought it down into the Jinchuriki's face. When the dust cleared, nothing but a crater remained where Naruto's face had once been. As the rest of his body dissolved into mud, hands sprouted out from the ground. Shit. A clone. He immediately leapt high into the air, landing on a tree branch. Almost instantaneously, a volley of kunai shot out from behind another tree trunk, impacting against his large burnt arms which he crossed in front of him. Shrugging off the attack, he jumped off in the direction the attack came from. His bulky arms cut the trunk in half, a poof of smoke from behind it revealing the attacker to have been a shadow clone. This is taking too frickin' long. What with all the chakra output, the Anbu will be on us in a couple minutes. The same thought presided over the Uzumaki's mind. This was a do-or-die situation. Naruto ran through a series of hand seals as the shadow clone beside him flashed through hand seals of its own. A massive amount of chakra was pumped into the technique as he held his index and middle fingers in front of his mouth. Katen, Ryuken no Jutsu, Futon, Atsugai. The combination jutsu evolved into a literal firestorm as the blazing inferno rained hell upon his target. Mizuki, who had felt his body growing slower with each passing second in his transformed state, could not hope to outrun this gargantuan conflagration, and so, he tried in vain to shield himself with his prided arms. Nothing but the smoking remains of a scorched corpse became of efforts. He was finally dead. Naruto panted as he sought to control his breathing. He had put too much chakra into that combination. Even though it went against his pride to have to resort to such a maneuver where much more subtle methods existed, however, his enemy didn't give him much choice. Even now, he didn't have much time to dally, as half the village was probably aware of his position. He had to leave, now, but once again, he was hindered. A tall pale shinobi stood before him, with purple-lined yellow eyes and waist-length black hair. A purple-colored rope was tied around his waist, a predatory grin set on his face. Absolutely marvelous, young Uchiha. My compliments on defeating Mizuki. Now tell me, where is the scroll? What scroll? He questioned, perfectly in stride. His confidence didn't waver for a second, though even the way the man walked was reminiscent of the most arrogant shinobi, shinobi who had built up that arrogance over years of experience. He knew this wouldn't be an easy one. "You amuse me, child. Nevertheless, show me what you can do." The ever-present condescending smirk still plastered over his features. Naruto knew he was working on borrowed time, so he charged, drawing his tando and running wind chakra through its blade. The man opened his mouth, from which emerged a snake bearing an elegant straight sword in its mouth. Taking hold of the sword, he parried Naruto's swipe, violently pushing his tando off to the side as he pierced deep into his shoulder, wrenching it downwards towards his heart, then pulling out. The rest of the body disintegrated as it fell lifeless. Meanwhile, the real Naruto hid below ground, racing away from the battlefield. Thank Kami that Kawarimi was just in time. He expressed a sigh of relief at the close call. Holy shit, what is Orochimaru of the Sannin doing here? Having witnessed his foe's blatant use of snake summons, he knew immediately who he was up against, and he was far out of his league. He would be extremely lucky if he escaped from this encounter unscathed. Alas, the man was an S-class shinobi for a reason, and it wasn't for being unresourceful. The earth split open as Orochimaru slammed his palm onto the ground, spitting out the escaping blonde. A giant snake followed in the wake of the powerful display of nature manipulation. Naruto wasted no time in ensnaring it in one of his ocular genjutsu, before rushing off towards the village once more. A moment later, his path was blocked by the snake-like shinobi, whose very stare very nearly inhibited his muscular movements. Very nearly being the key word, he narrowly avoided being reduced to paste as a chasm opened up beneath him, at the ready to swallow him up. Despite the Sharingan's ability to process lightning-fast exchanges instantaneously and show them to the user in slow motion, he was nowhere near fast enough to react in time to the punch from behind, nor the drop kick that appeared out of thin air as the man materialized in front of him, in line of his trajectory. In one short minute, he had gone from tiredly victorious, to exhaustedly defeated. Running through so much chakra in his fight against Mizuki had been a mistake, though given the circumstances, he would be hard-pressed to do any better. He needed to end the fight as quickly as possible, and with the Chunin's heightened physical abilities due to whatever it was that he had done, going head-to-head in a taijutsu bout would have led to a highly drawn-out battle of attrition, which would have been a lose-lose situation anyway. Even still, he couldn't place the blame on his previous fight alone. He still retained a substantial amount of chakra by normal standards, but the order of magnitude by which his new opponent's skills eclipsed his own was without contest. It was over, and he knew it. Naruto struggled to stand once more, the pain racking his body nigh unbearable. He gathered chakra for a second, and then with a set of successive shunshines on end, traversed almost half the distance to Konoha's outer walls before a long and red rope-like object circled around his foot, arresting his momentum and causing him to land on his hands, cartwheeling back to a standing position. Another tug on his feet and he came crashing down to the ground, but not before running a wind-coated hand through the binding holding him, which on later inspection was revealed to be an extension of Orochimaru's tongue. A lot could be said about how gross that is, if I didn't have much more stuff important to deal with right now. I must say, I am quite impressed, young Uchiha. My name is Orochimaru, and I'll be leaving you with a gift, a mere inkling as to what awaits at my disposal. I'm sure you will enjoy it immensely. If it's power you seek, you will know where to find me. Kukaku. A sinister cackle to go with his typically villainous monologue was followed by his neck extending forth from his body, and Naruto was left powerless to do anything but watch as the Sannin bit the boy on the neck, eliciting a pronounced groan emanating from his throat. The blonde's gaze blurred as semi-unconsciousness overtook him, the departing Sannin's final words ringing in his ears. I hope you'll live up to my expectations, young Uchiha. I hope you'll live up to my expectations, young Uchiha. Those words continued to echo through his mind as he was shaken awake, hours after he had been knocked out. Naruto opened his eyes as the brilliant rays of sunlight dazzled him. He lay on his back in the middle of a clearing, concealing a half-foot-deep impression in the ground where he had been slammed into the forest bed the night before. Instantly on alert, he violently pushed the offending hand away, jumping up in a start before recognizing the feminine hands that had shaken him earlier. Just then, a haze took over his mind as he lost all sense of control over himself. And then, he felt it. Power, a lot of it, coursing through his veins. The blonde could see purple waves of chakra emanating from within him, rising up and around him, cloaking him in their dark and powerful embrace. The feeling was euphoric in nature, making him feel like he never had before, like he could do anything. He flexed his muscles, satisfied with the results. Suddenly, his vision shifted. He was now in a dark corridor, which looked not much different from the sewers that ran underneath Konoha, and which, many a time, had served as a life-saving escape route for the Jinchuriki when faced with vengeful mobs in his youth. Just that the walls were dissolving. Things were falling from the ceiling, and it seemed as if the entire place would fall apart soon. He began to walk forwards, heading towards the door set at the end. Before Naruto was halfway there, a set of tremors began to shake the hall, and the door opened of its own accord, a purple mist blowing its way in. He continued on, wandering into the mist. In a matter of seconds, he heard sizzling, and soon his naked skin too began to burn. The blonde turned back on his heels as he darted back to the other end of the corridor, but it was a dead end, with no way out. His vision shifted once more. He watched as a woman stood in a fighting stance, ready to counter an impending attack. But he could see no one else in the area but himself. She looked like she had begun fighting already, a bruise on the right side of her cheek an obvious indication. She looked strong, but surely not as strong as himself. Why don't we test that? Unsure where that unusual sentiment had come from, but complying nonetheless, he lunged at the woman, who held a shell-shocked expression on her face, standing frozen in place for a while before parrying just at the last moment. Her lips were moving, and she was screaming something, but his ears weren't working for some reason. They didn't need to either. He was loving this. Whatever that Orochimaru person had done to him, it was most welcome. His speed had rocketed sky high, and his power was much greater. He could feel it in each swing of his arms, and the way the older kunoichi before him was constantly backpedaling away only further cemented that notion. His eyes blurred once more. The corridor was slowly filling up with the poisonous purple mist, burning through some of the pipes that ran overhead, spilling out a blue substance, which by its looks, could be nothing else but chakra. But did he care? Not really. He was enjoying this. That feeling of power, of being able to dominate others was worth anything, and a couple pipes lost here and there wouldn't hurt anybody. He stayed like that for several minutes, basking in the power he felt as his vision alternated several times between the physical world and where he was now. The utopia didn't last though. His chakra came crashing out of the pipes, multiple ones had been corroded open by now, in a wave of purity, as it began to blow back the invading mist. The evident lack of purple did much to clear up his foggy mind. Regaining his bearings, Naruto shook his head. What was I thinking? Allowing myself to remain vulnerable like that. Seeing his chance, Naruto called upon his chakra, summoning it to surround him, forming a cloak of blue chakra to counter the purple one as he dashed in through the foggy mist, and despite the highly painful burning sensation of purple chakra eating through his own, he held back his agony as he burst through the door on the other side, emerging into a large circular chamber with a dome-like ceiling towering far above. Right in front of him stood the subject of his nightmares from the night before, his pale skin and long black hair as vivid as last time. Orochimaru's body, though, held a much more serpentine appearance than last time, with a scaled face and arms, all covered in the same dark purple aura that had been seeping into the corridor earlier. Ah, Uchiha-kun. How nice of you to join us. You surprised me by coming even this far. Not many have been able to accomplish even so much. How do you like it? My curse mark, that is. It's fascinating, isn't it? What do you mean by fascinating? Look at the world around you. And look, he did. He could now see a hole in the walls of the chamber, showing himself, surrounded in the purple aura, completely dominating his fight with the woman. Look at yourself. You're playing around with her. The power of the curse mark knows no bounds. Regular jonins stand no chance against you now. And when you master it, and if you chose to obtain the secret to the second stage of the cursed seal, you will become invincible. Kokokaku. The Jinchuriki's eyes flashed red as he awakened his fully matured Sharingan. Do not think you can mess with my body and get away with it, Orochimaru. The boy stated sternly, as he began racing through hand seals. Ryuken no Jutsu. A deluge of fire sprayed out from Naruto's mouth, filling his line of sight with flames, but his eyes still roved around the area, searching for some place where his opponent would appear from. It couldn't have been that easy. Kokokaku. Behind him stood the snake-like man, absolutely unharmed. Tut. Not so easy, young Uchiha. Time is a-ticking. As we speak, the cursed seal's chakra is penetrating through your system, establishing its hold. Soon, it will be in control. Unless, of course, if you come to me. There, you will learn to control it, to harness all that delicious power and direct it to your will. Do not overestimate yourself, Orochimaru. This is my body, my rules. Naruto realized he wasn't sure he could back up that statement, but the one thing he couldn't tolerate was not being in control of himself. It was the one thing he prided himself on after all. Control, discipline, finesse. The qualities most sought after in a shinobi. Something he had put himself through hell to achieve. He wouldn't let it go that easily. All of a sudden, the blonde remembered how he had gotten here through the corrosive mist. It was his body. His chakra had to be permeating the place. He placed his hands in the ram seal, summoning as much chakra as he could feel. That same blue glow that had covered him earlier once more engulfed him, only this time, it was much stronger. And then, a large tap fitted into a nearby pipe wide enough for a horse slowly opened up, wave upon wave of dense dark blue chakra flowing out of it like a roaring river. The Sannin didn't know what hit him. 1 second, he was enjoying his taming of the young boy that struggled before him, and the next, he was being assaulted from all sides by an incredibly dense chakra in such great quantity that he himself was hard-pressed for survival. It went without saying, of course, that he only had a fraction of his power sealed here with the curse mark. The majority of his power was supposed to come from the Senjutsu chakra that the curse mark was supposed to absorb, but it hadn't had enough time yet. He wasn't expecting the boy to awaken for at least another day. If that wasn't bad enough, what nature chakra was absorbed was being directed by Hugo's genes to pump it through the boy's body, once the curse seal was activated. That had to stop. Regardless, despite shutting down the curse mark and rerouting all of the remaining chakra to himself, he was too late to do anything as the slicing blades of wind chakra shredded him limb from limb. Naruto took a deep breath as he observed the results of his effort. It was amazing what scale of attacks were possible inside one's mindscape. He assumed that's where he was, that you couldn't actually do in real life. Molding so much chakra and concentrating it in one place of your body required a trying amount of focus that held no meaning inside your head. Having exhaled a mighty storm of hurricane winds which, had he not been fighting an S-rank shinobi, he was sure would have annihilated his opponent, he waited for the dust to clear. In place of the tall pale-skinned man that was trying to take control over his body, there now stood a gargantuan serpent, easily 25 feet tall, and nearly thrice as long. The giant serpent appeared to be covered in white scales all through its body, but on closer inspection, he found that it consisted of myriads of smaller white snakes intertwined together to form the giant of a creature. Oh! Shoot! Kukukaku! What does it take to kill this guy? Behold my true form, young Uchiha. And be proud you have made it this far. Of all those who have seen it, none had lived to tell the tale. But don't worry, I won't kill you yet. I still have plans for you. With that, round 2 commenced. A new flood of purple chakra came rolling off of the beast, spreading surprisingly quick to the far corners of the chamber. Had it not been for being immersed in coat upon coat of his own quite potent chakra, Naruto knew he would have dissolved right from the get-go. Despite that though, it was now Naruto who was on the back foot as Orochimaru now actively initiated the attack. He had had enough fun and games, it seemed. Slithering across the floor at a velocity that belied his size, the snake struck dead center, with the blonde having time enough to just barely cross his arms in an awkward block. Yet, he was sent flying back, crashing to a stop in front of a set of iron bars reaching high into the horizon. He could see those bars extending to the far reaches of his vision on either side, with a dark mass lying on the other side. He had no time to contemplate this however, as the colossal predator was hot on his heels. Forming 2 shadow clones, he stood his ground as they each charged an insane amount of chakra into their bodies, releasing all at once to devastating effects. The attacking serpent was rent asunder and scorched black as the literal firestorm cooked anything in its path, even blowing through several large chakra pipes in the vicinity. Heaving a sigh of relief, Naruto was nowhere near prepared for the sonic shockwave of a roar that the creature emitted in rage as it mended itself back. The split parts were reconnected as new snakes grew out of its abdomen and replaced the dead parts of its body. He sure looks pissed off now. In a roar of outrage, Orochimaru's true form uncoiled in a violent jerk, missing its target and slamming into the giant bars that could only be a prison of sorts. The tremors from the collision could be felt everywhere in the chamber. Once more, the incensed serpent pounced, and once more Naruto dodged, leaving the serpent's head to bash into the giant bars. Getting up to recover from the hit to its head, another ominous feeling arose from behind the bars. A bit of movement, and then the huge dark mass rose, a deep voice resounding through the chamber. Who dare wake me from my rest? Who brings this impure essence to my prison? The serpent backed off, trying to assess the threat level of this new player in the field. He had not expected another being to be sharing a mind with the young gem of an Uchiha he had discovered, let alone, that he would be a Jinchuriki, of the 9 tails at that. He could only hope that the boy himself had no knowledge of how to harness the tailed beast's power. I've struck gold, it seems. There's no opportunity like the present to avail the Kyuubi's chakra and strike a deal with it. It is I, Uzumaki Naruto, your jailer and Jinchuriki. In all this while, Naruto had been scrutinizing the numerous seal tags placed on separate pillars along the length of the prison. I'm here to demand access to your chakra, Kyuubi. What do you take me for, tiny human? A mere tool you may use as you please? No one commands the great Kyuubi, Lord of Makai. I do not fight others' battles. Fight them yourself if you think you're so great. You will lend me your chakra, because if you don't, not only my body, but also you will become subservient to Orochimaru's will. This whole place will reek of the grotesque chakra that you have just had a taste of so far. Foolish human. What do I gain by helping you? You gain access to Dash. A loud creaking broke him off as the Jinchuriki saw the snake opening its mouth, charging up a beam of pure chakra to shoot out at him. Naruto summoned 3 shadow clones, who nodded to him, getting to work inscribing seals on the ground at lightning speed, setting up the fastest barrier they could think of as the original continued to speak with its prisoner, a sense of urgency creeping into his tone. You gain access to a portion of your chakra at all times, and you will no longer be held in place by the chains that bind you now, on the condition that you never use the chakra against me. HMMPH. It is still you who stands to gain from this. Time's up, boy. Orochimaru butted in, his head poking out of the serpent's head. Earlier, I had no idea you were a Jinchuriki. I will no longer go easy on you now that I do. The monster then released the massive amounts of energy it had charged up, shooting out the beam like a blast from a cannon. The Jinchuriki's shadow clones however had not been sitting idle, as they arranged themselves to counter the incoming threat. With the original powering the barrier, putting in all the juice he could muster, it stood strong against the gradually weakening attack, an indication that it wasn't just the blonde who had emptied his reserves giving his all to this exchange. And though it seemed to have been a stalemate, with both attack and defense unable to continue due to lack of chakra, Naruto knew that it was his defeat. Despite both being out of steam, the sheer physical capabilities of the great white snake monumentally outclassed any such physical endeavor from the downed boy, and they both knew that. Seeing its chance, the snake swooped in for the kill, ready to hold the boy's mind in his clutches, steering him towards defecting from Konoha and coming to join his real master. How sad that his Jinchuriki status would mess with the Sanin's plans to use him as a future vessel for his soul. He would surely find some other use for him. He was a diamond in the trough after all. Impressive. For a human child, that is. I will help you, if only to see how far you will go. Release my bonds then. My chakra as well. Without a hint of hesitation, Naruto peeled off one of the paper seals embedded on the iron pillar. The effects were nigh on instantaneous. Torrent upon torrent of red fiery chakra flooded the chamber, coalescing into a solid mass outside the prison. The chakra shaped itself into a smaller version of a fox, ready to confront the towering serpent. Despite being much smaller in stature, it didn't take long for anyone to guess that the fox would be victorious. Its vastly more potent chakra inundated the place, leaving the snake suffocating. It then attacked the monster, pinning it down as a fresh flood of Baijiu chakra engulfing the behemoth decided the outcome. Mere moments into the encounter, the already exhausted serpentine monster was trounced. Its body dissolved into nothingness, as the purple chakra receded into an opening in the far wall, thinning out until nothing remained. My bonds, boy. Got it. The blonde Jinchuriki trudged over to the iron gate, removing another seal tag. A clinking sound indicated that the chains had released his prisoner, as they gratingly retreated back from whence they came. It was finally over. I can barely stand right now. It's a miracle I was able to hold on for as long as I did. Need some rest. Until next time then, QB. Humph. With drooping eyes, Naruto returned to the corridor he had first appeared in, finally succumbing to the blackness that grasped at his vision. Then, the lights went out. It felt like he had spent quite a while resting, but he couldn't tell really. He awoke finding himself in the same position he had a short while ago, a woman shaking him awake. Deja vu, really? What has gotten into you, brat? She asked worriedly. Looking around at the way the forest had seemed to have experienced a natural disaster. Why do you have the curse mark? What were you doing out here anyway? Not in a condition to immediately give an answer to the plethora of questions that came his way, Naruto gave the person a once-over. She was the person who he was fighting in his dream, or was that reality? The blood flowing down her cheeks and the bruises on her legs said yes it was. She was a young woman of average height, with light brown eyes and violet hair styled in a short spiky fan ponytail. She wore a tight-fitted mesh suit that stretched from her neck down to her thighs, over which she wore a tan overcoat and a dark orange miniskirt, none of which did much to hide the woman's voluptuous body. Anko Mitarashi was someone he had come to recognize years ago. Any observant person in Konoha would. She was an outcast, ostracized just as he was, by the civilian populace at least. The shinobi ranks at least seemed to hold some sort of respect for her, or was that a tinge of fear as well? In any case, she persevered. He knew because she was a good friend of Shisui's back when he still lived. It was not uncommon for the duo to retire to a dengo stand on their way back from a long day of strenuous training, where meeting up with Anko was all but assured. God, Anko. What happened to you? Did I do that? A matter-of-fact stare was all he got. Okay, so I was really out of it. But it's under control now, it won't happen again. I'm sorry. No, seriously, brat, what happened? Is everything okay? Naruto donned his public face once more, making sure he looked as anxious as he should be. No, Anko, everything isn't all right. Mizuki-sensei stole the forbidden scroll of seals and tried to escape with it. I pursued and confronted him over there. He pointed to the clearing that he had trashed the night before. Mizuki-sensei turned out to be stronger than I expected, and he was using some bastardization of Orochimaru's curse mark. After a long battle, I was able to defeat him, but what I didn't realize was that the snake himself was lying in wait. He gave me a right thrashing and left me with this hickey as a souvenir. That bastard. So Mizuki was working for Orochimaru all along? He must be the spy we were trying to root out for so long. The blonde's narrative broke off as the overzealous Kunoichi got started on her passionate tirade. So did he get away? Obviously. And the curse mark? The Kyuubi's chakra expelled Orochimaru's influence from it, leaving just the power and none of the mind control and loss of perception that accompanies it. Well, that's good. Oh, and Anko? Yes? I'd like it if you kept the part about Orochimaru and my cursed seal a secret. You know how people are. I don't want to give them yet another stupid reason to hate me. You sure? Maybe you can have Jiraiya have a look at it. Seal it away so it doesn't bother you. Like mine. No, I'm good. Besides, I think I have enough experience with Fuwu and Jutsu to deal with it on my own. That bastard. I swear I'll kill him for everything he's done. The purple-haired woman pumped her fist in one of her typical displays of passion. You won't be alone, Anko. I'll make sure you fulfill your dream. You know what? Despite your sometimes stoic exterior, you're actually a pretty sweet brat, Anko exclaimed, snatching the blonde up in a hug, which he grudgingly endured for the first 3 seconds. Okay, that's enough, Anko. No need to plaster your boobs all over me for full effect. I get the point. What do you know? You get new alliances and win over new loyalties every day. With a triumphant grin, the blonde hopped off home. Now, to delve into that delicious scroll I've just gotten myself. 30. Team 1 will be. The absence of both Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei was quite obvious as Iruka's junior assistant Takata stood alone before the class, turning even the most interesting part of the year into nothing more than a droning mess. And Team 7 will consist of Uchiha Kiyomi, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto. Your instructor will be Hatake Kakashi. 3 loud groans signified that the students knew who they were being handed off to. Naruto had regaled them quite often of tales of Kakashi-sensei, the man who would be late for his own funeral. But on second thought, they weren't really all that unfortunate after all. Seeing that they, along with 1 or 2 others, were the last Uchiha Jonin alive, it only stood to reason that Sharingan no Kakashi would be their teacher. That's funny. I don't recall Konoha admin ever being that efficient before. Especially with regards to me. True that. Kiyomi replied. I wonder what went right this time around. She and Sasuke had been told of Naruto's burden by the Jinchuriki himself, after the Uchiha massacre. It was just a way for them to know that he could relate to their pain. That he too had gone through so much melancholy in his life, that he could empathize. They had taken it surprisingly well, given the circumstances. Now that she thought about it. While Kiyomi only increased in respect for the boy, Sasuke grew jealous as well. Well, Sasuke grew jealous of anyone with some sort of special ability these days. The massacre had truly screwed with his head. It took 1,000 promises on both their ends that they would help him achieve his ambition that he grew to accept Naruto's newly revealed power. It still confused her to this day. What went wrong in that perfect life of theirs? What made Itachi snap? Snap and kill off over 95% of the clan? It was just unprecedented. It's just not fair. Konoha wasn't ever fair to the Uchiha anyway. Always preferring the Senju over us, and now one of our very own betrays us. Sensei, I'll avenge you if it's the last thing I do. We're going to be in for a pretty long wait, aren't we? Yup, might as well get comfortable. Having said that, the blonde got up and motioned for the others to follow. Sasuke was already quite used to his friend's antics, and not the least in the mood for arguing, so he just followed suit. Kiyomi, though, was curious. Where are you going? We're supposed to wait here. Just come. This idiot is gonna go anyway, Sasuke urged. Fine. The 3 walked in relative silence as they left the academy building, climbing up the stairs behind the Hokage building to reach the path leading up to the top of the Hokage monument. There. Now we can relax in peace, and we can see when Kakashi-sensei arrives. He set up camp on the head of the Yondaime, resting his back on one of his spiky hard locks. Kiyomi too, took a seat right by him. But Sasuke remained standing. He stared off into the distance, an angry look in his eyes. But soon, that anger turned into resolute firmness. Spar with me, Naruto, he declared. Fine, fine. Ruin the mood. Naruto got up, summoning a shadow clone to keep watch over the academy building for him. Placing his index and middle fingers on a spot on his upper forearm, he concentrated some chakra to unseal his Tanto, which he fixed to his upper back for ease of access. "Ready? Hey, don't forget about me," Kiyomi called out as she too ran up to join the standoff. "All right then. Let's begin." 3 sets of Sharingan blared into existence as the spar commenced, absolutely oblivious to the 2 other sets of eyes that stood hidden in the distance, judging the competence of the last signs of the Uchiha. "Ready? Hey, don't forget about me," Kiyomi called out as she ran up to join the standoff. "All right then. Let's begin." 3 sets of Sharingan blared into existence as the spar commenced, absolutely oblivious to the 2 other sets of eyes that stood hidden in the distance, judging the competence of the last signs of the Uchiha. Sasuke was the first to make a move as the boy leapt down at his rival below him, careful not to lose his footing as he descended down the stone forehead of the Yondaime Hokage, eager to take out his frustration against the world on the blonde before him. Naruto, however, was not one to allow his opponent the high ground without just cause, and so, seconds before impact, he shunshined over to the top of the Hokage monument, where he was joined momentarily by Kiyomi. Sasuke, on the other hand, was pouring all his efforts into overcoming his downward momentum, lest he should fall off the surface. He had anticipated a block or parry from the blonde, which would have reduced his speed considerably, all the while unbalancing Naruto to give him less time to recover and respond to his second assault. A sudden lack of decelerating impulse before him sent him stumbling down the mountain face, desperately grasping for any sort of handhold on the uneven surface. Finally, having regained his balance after several crucial seconds of flailing wildly at the rocky cliff, Sasuke could not help but cross his arms to ward off the spinning kick that rocketed into his side, courtesy of his cousin. The two had teamed up against him as usual, hoping to knock out the cocky one right from the get-go. He of course ended up spread-eagled on the roof of the Hokage Tower after having been launched off the face of the Yondaime. He was offered no respite as he was forced to roll backwards and somersault into a standing position as what was most likely an earth clone of Naruto slammed his boot down where his chest had been earlier. Naruto drew his Tanto, unsheathing it from his back as he allowed Sasuke to settle into his stance. He was buying time, which only confirmed that it was a clone. The real Naruto was probably still somewhere on the cliff, battling it out with Kiyomi. "Hey Broody! What's wrong? Where'd all that talk go?" Sasuke lashed out with a snarl, releasing a hail of shuriken as he began moving, dashing this way and that, just as his brother that man, had shown him, oh so long ago, never staying in one place long enough to become a target. He zigzagged his way to the clone, who seemed content with parrying all of his projectiles with his Tanto, expertly weaving it through the flight of ninja weapons. Ever since Naruto had started using his Sharingan in conjunction with his Tanto, his Kenjutsu skills had grown remarkably. His strokes had become more refined, his movements more fluid, his sight ever sharper and his strikes and parries far more precise. Not a movement was wasted. He moved his Tanto ever so slightly, just tilting it so that the shuriken ricocheted away, falling uselessly to the side. Sasuke engaged the clone in a close-up taijutsu match, darting into his guard and going in for a knife jab to the abdomen, which the blonde evaded, leaping back a couple feet. The two clashed once more, Sasuke wielding a regular kunai to account for his opponent's Tanto. Sparks flew as the weapons clanged against each other, once, again, and a third time. The rivals disengaged, glaring each other down as they took their stances for another bout. Meanwhile, the real Naruto was involved in battling the third member of their newly formed squad. She was a ferocious fighter, and just about as skilled as Sasuke, though in a one-on-one contest, she would probably win just on experience and her smaller-sized ego. Kiyomi too was someone who had experienced loss at a similar magnitude as Sasuke. She had not only lost the only family she knew, including her older brother, parents and everyone else, she had lost her sensei as well, who also happened to be an Uchiha in the massacre. All of this on top of her Inuzuka teammates' crippling injuries and the previous Chunin exams at Tsuna had left her quite depressed and gloomy, with Naruto and Sasuke as the only people in the world who she still felt close to and with whom she enjoyed being. Especially Naruto. With Sasuke falling into his sulky moods, Naruto was the one who held the two of them away from insanity, almost stupidly persistent in his joviality, never succumbing to the air of melancholy as he would show up every day, pushing for a spar. Even now, where Sasuke was busy trying to prove he was as good as if not better than Naruto, Naruto would not let her feel like she wasn't part of the group, finding a way to engage both of them simultaneously. That was why she had petitioned to the Hokage to put her in a team with those two. That was why, when it came out that Jonan Uchiha could no longer live alone, she had decided she would be moving in with the blonde, and she would drag Sasuke with her kicking and screaming. They were all she had left of her perfect world, a world that had been shattered by an otherworldly blast, and now she could do naught but try to gather the scattered shards. Shaking herself out of memory lane, Kiyomi caught the smile that threatened to break out on her lips as she thought of the boy that now stood 10 feet from her, waiting for her to come back from her daydream so they could spar. Rubbing the back of her head awkwardly, she took her stance. "Ready to lose to a girl?" she called out. "A bloodline-wielding demon-eyed veteran Jinan girl who has at least a year of experience over me? Nah, never," he remarked with a snort. "You're not gonna shut up on your own, are you?" "I'm not gonna grace that with a response." With that, Kiyomi lashed out with a handful of shuriken, letting them soar into Naruto's face, which he dodged almost immediately, but Kiyomi had only needed the split second to run through the seals for the jutsu she intended to use. Making use of her two-tomed Sharingan to predict precisely where the blonde would dodge to, she took a deep breath, lifting her fingers to her mouth as she let loose with a screaming fireball. Katen, Gukakyu no Jutsu. Having predicted this would happen, as it was usually one of Kiyomi's normal opening moves, Naruto substituted with a log lying on the edge of the forest beyond, coming back into the fight with a drawn tanto. The girl too had drawn her kunai, and so the spar began in earnest, as the two moved into close range, swinging their respective weapons at each other while blocking the other's attempts. Soon however, it became apparent that Naruto would continue to dominate this fight if only due to his weapon's greater reach. The back and forth continued for several minutes until Kiyomi began to slow, and Naruto landed a glancing blow to her waist. With a stifled moan, she jumped back to make some distance between the two, but Naruto wouldn't let her get away that easily. In a single leap, he closed the distance between the two and they were back to square one. Sending all caution to the wind, Kiyomi turned her back to the blonde and set out in the opposite direction at a full sprint, Naruto quick at her tail. In a matter of seconds, he had come within reach and front-kicked her body into a nearby tree, but as she flew away, a fireball came flying in Naruto's face, forcing him to turn his attention to jumping out of the way. As Kiyomi fell to the ground below, Naruto was already upon her, sword pointed at her prone body. "Yield," he demanded. Until his Sharingan noted the glow of chakra from her abdominal region. "Shit. It's a fake." He quickly leapt away as the scorching winds from the ensuing explosion slammed into his face, leaving darkened spots on his face where they had burned him. "Thank goodness I closed my eyes. That explosion was far stronger than any ordinary explosive tag." Naruto took a ready stance as he used his Sharingan to scour the training field for his opponent. Hearing a rustling noise to the left, he created a shadow clone, which started bombarding that area with low-level fire jutsu. In the meanwhile, the original seared any further signs of movement, and stood at the ready, having already gathered the chakra necessary for his next move. The moment his quarry showed up escaping from the line of fire, he instantly engaged with his tanto. Kiyomi made to block with her kunai, but in that moment, made the mistake that cost her the spar. She looked into the red eyes of a prepared Naruto. Instantly, she fell unconscious. Having cleaned things up here, Naruto moved to finish up the fight with Sasuke as his clone hefted his teammate over his shoulder. Down by the roof of the Hokage building, Sasuke was bent over huffing as he finally managed to get rid of that annoying-ass clone of Naruto's. Being an Earth clone, it could weather far more punishment than the average ordinary clone could, and was also not too much of a chakra drain on its creator. The clone had inherited Naruto's creative mind, loath as he was to admit to it, and kept him on his toes as he was forced to preserve chakra for when he fought Naruto, while the clone had no such compunctions. Hearing the sounds of battle quieting down from the Hokage mountain, the Earth clone realized that it wouldn't have to hold out for long. It let loose with reckless abandon, its only purpose to wear down its opponent before the original came to wrap things up. Katen, Ryuken no Jutsu. Fire release, Dragon Flame Technique. Letting out a searing torrent of fire, the clone didn't wait to see what became of Sasuke as he followed it up with one of the most powerful wind techniques he knew. Credits to Danzo for that one. Futon, Hagashi Kaze. Wind release, Torrential wind. A tornado's worth of ruthless gale force winds blew upon the fiery conflagration that ensued from his previous jutsu, carrying the all-encompassing flame to the four corners of the rooftop, in addition to blowing off the metal railing lining the edges of the building. Moments later a violent crash announced the breaking off of the spiral staircase leading to the top. Oops. At least I'll be dispelled long before the boss finds out. Sasuke had so far been fighting cautiously, preserving as much chakra as he could for the actual fight, but getting his arms charred from the intense fire techniques had left him short of patience. Going through the motions for a low-power but insanely quick and widespread lightning jutsu, Sasuke lowered both arms to the ground as he channeled chakra to his palms. Raiten, Kaminari Saji. Lightning release, lightning surge. Electricity raced from where his palms touched the ground in all directions, leaving no avenue of escape for the Naruto clone as it flowed up its body, the shock causing it to dispel. As Sasuke took a couple moments to recover, his rest was interrupted by the figure of the blonde menace himself standing on the Yondaime's head. "Wow, Sasuke! You finally beat my clone." Naruto made his presence known as a clone appeared, carrying the prone form of his cousin. "Don't get too cocky, Naruto. I'm only getting warmed up," Sasuke replied. That superior smirk that the Jinchuriki carried was frustrating beyond belief. The fact that he could usually back it up didn't serve to make things any better. The blonde leapt down onto the rooftop, sheathing his danto as he assumed his stance, feet wide in the taijutsu style that he had developed with Shisui, and later perfected with Danzo. Both boys were raring to go until they stiffened, sensing a familiar chakra signature showing up. "You're early," Naruto remarked. "Well, I decided the two of you had done enough damage to the Hokage Tower for one day." He deadpanned. "Hasn't even been 3 hours since the team was formed and already, you'll be paying thousands of ryu in damages." "I deny all responsibility for this. It was entirely Duckbutt's fault." He pointed at his teammate. "No matter. Let this be a lesson in teamwork then." Both boys' faces paled at the thought of what that meant. "Kiyomi's on the team too, right? So does that mean, someone talking about me?" She sat up groggily, steadying herself with her arms. "Yes, of course, the folly of the individual is the folly of the team. Those that abandon their teammates are worse than scum. If it's actually worth so much to you, maybe you'll think twice before going at each other's throats around valuable property next time." Kakashi's trademark eye smile did nothing to quiet the phantom groans that each of their wallets gave. "Anyway, meet me at Training Ground 7 in 5 minutes so we can get down to business." With that, the masked ninja puffed out of existence. He was quickly followed by 3 sets of puffs, one for each of the Genin as they arrived at the designated location momentarily. "That was fast," said Kakashi, looking up from the orange little book he was reading. "I wasn't expecting you for another couple of minutes." "Oh, who am I kidding? This is the sister and apprentice of Shisui of the body flicker I'm talking about here, along with their third wheel of a sidekick." "Ooh yeah. Anyway, now that you're here, let's all introduce ourselves." 30. The team test had not been what he had expected. The 3 Genin were anything but. Each of them possessed power and skill to rival a newly promoted Chunin at the very least, and that became apparent quite vividly in the opening moments of the test. The 3 had already decided that the bells would go to Naruto and Sasuke, since Kiyomi being a seasoned Genin could not conceivably be sent back to the academy as their instructor had promised, and so it was the 2 boys that needed to prove their mettle and secure their spots as elite Genin who were offered Jounin senseis, as opposed to the hundreds of Genin who failed to catch the eye of an elite Jounin such as Kakashi. That decided, it became an exercise in teamwork, where they enacted several combos that they had rehearsed time and time again against Shisui or occasionally even Ita, that man. Kakashi felt irked. His attempts at splitting up his team failed miserably, and they had begun to work like a well-oiled machine, no doubt the result of long training sessions together. Either they already knew the true meaning of the test, which was highly unlikely, as it was established tradition not to give away the secret of the bell test to aspiring new Genin, or they were truly so selfless that they put the success of the team above their own. In either case, it seemed like he might actually have to pass them. That was the hook. Proficiency in a straight-up taijutsu fight, even though he was taking things easy on them. Expertise at detecting and dispelling different types of low-level genjutsu, and a mastery of various elemental jutsu that no fresh out of the academy Genin had any business knowing. But things really came to a head when all 3 of them leapt out of the bushes they had been hiding behind. He'd already had a read on their locations before they broke cover, though Kakashi had to admit that their stealth was not bad. "Maneuver Gamma," Naruto cried as he came charging into the field. "Roger, Roger." Sasuke let loose with a hail of shuriken at their masked team leader, forcing him to dodge. Sharingan blaring, Sasuke knew exactly which direction Kakashi would dodge right before he did, and so he continued to pepper him with the ninja weapons, herding him to where Kiyomi and Naruto lay in wait. Naruto waited until Kakashi went past his position, and then launched himself at the masked nin from behind, going straight for the bells. At the same time, another Naruto jumped up from behind the first one and leapt straight at the man, Tando drawn. Kakashi turned around at the last second, parrying the more imminent attack to his person with a kunai in his right hand, and blocking the following punch to his torso with his left. He lashed out with a devastating kick to the Naruto who had come into range of the bells, until it suddenly went up in a poof. Kakashi's eye turned to the one he was engaged in a deadlock with as he saw the Sharingan set in his eyes. "Nice trick. Distracting me with the original while a clone went for the bells." But not quite good enough though. And then it was over. The genjutsu only managed to keep hold for all of 3 seconds, before Kakashi realized something wasn't right, but those 3 seconds, in a shinobi battle, could mean the difference between life and death. The illusion was powerful in that it didn't change much at all. It still showed the world as Kakashi had last perceived it, both of his arms engaged with blocking Naruto's previous attacks. What it didn't show was Kiyomi getting in position behind him, slapping the third tag in place to complete the configuration for the 3-corner barrier Fuon jutsu that suddenly appeared around the 2 deadlocked shinobi. Those translucent blue walls going up were the first thing Kakashi saw after having broken out of the illusion, having no time to escape from the rapidly forming prison. At least Naruto was trapped in there with him. Poof. Or not. Bravo. Bravo. You seem to have trapped me. But you still do not have the bells. Kakashi taunted coolly. How long will you keep me here before you run out of cha? He was cut off as a kunai whistled through the air, forcing him to dodge in the little confined space he had available. Pass us. Else by the time you get out of there, you'll have become a spike-filled pincushion, Sasuke stated wisely. And sinker. 30. Nobody ever said doing D ranks was fun. Particularly when the job entailed collecting all the dung some idiotic farmer's cows had laid out on their neighbor's porch and garden, and applying it as fertilizer to his fields. Especially when 2 members of the 3-man team had gotten used to far more exciting missions over the past year. The glares end, and so it is that we find a trio of grumpy teenagers finishing up with a job that they would never again sign up for of their own free will. That's it. I'm sick and tired of this. This entire mission is bullshit. Sasuke finally broke the silence. Well duh. That's what the client said. You're literally being paid to deal with his bullshit. What did you expect? Came the typical Naruto reply. Rose-smelling bullshit maybe? Kiyomi pitched in snarkily. Given that the stupid cows ate up half the garden, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did smell of roses. Sasuke tossed the final piece of dung into the fields as he breathed a sigh of relief, aching to go anywhere but here. As if on cue, Kakashi showed up right in their midst, his eyes not looking up at all from his apparently very interesting smut. Well done, team. Let's go collect our payment and the next mission for the day. Kakashi spoke in that sing-song voice, intimately aware of how torturous the very thought was. Please, no more D ranks. Sok moaned. I'll die if I have to do a single D rank more. I must say, I agree with Sasuke. We've already completed over 40 missions. This is getting ridiculous. Kiyomi added with a whine. Do you share the same sentiments, Naruto? Most definitely. Well then, you may present your case before Hokage-sama. 30. The next morning, we find 5 people walking out of Konoha's main gate. Konoha's Team 7, their sensei, who was surprisingly only 3 minutes late as opposed to his customary 3 hours, and an old man named Tezuna, a bridge builder from Wave who needed a shinobi squad to escort him back to his home. Suspicious as that was, given he apparently came to Konoha alone and had no business there in the first place, the Junon team nevertheless had jumped at the opportunity to finally do a C-rank mission after having slaved their way through a month's worth of grueling but unexciting and mundane D ranks, barring of course, the horrible experience that was doing a joint D rank with Team Guy of all people, which consisted less of useless char completion than it did a monstrous physical endurance regimen, specialized genjutsu resistance training. We all know which one, and last but certainly not least, learning how to periodically and spontaneously disconnect their fragile minds from their audiosensory perceptions, lest they be damaged from excessive exposure to the springtime of youth. Setting the record for fastest completion of the Capture Tora mission and the scathing glares and suspicious looks that now not only Naruto, but also Sasuke and Kiyomi had received from the local clientele had been the highlight of these missions. As if to add to their misery, the same villagers who had once sung praises of the surviving Uchiha prodigies now looked at them with looks of scorn and deep-rooted suspicion. Upon snooping around while under a henge at Kakashi's behest, the 2 public and 1 secret Uchiha had discovered the cause. Rumors that had stemmed from the general population's mistrust of the Uchiha ever since the devastation caused by the Kyuubi, and had developed ever since the Uchiha massacre. Rumors of rebellion, of a plot to turn against Konoha. How the hell did that get out? Naruto had thought to himself. Even among the surviving Uchiha, only he knew that there was such a plot, and that too due to his close association with Danzo in the past. Someone deliberately leaked this. He finally decided that he would get to the bottom of this, sooner or later, and when he did, they would pay. It wasn't bad enough that Konoha had screwed his family over first by withholding their help until all was lost and Dozo Shiogakure had fallen, then at his parents' death, where anyone could have stepped forward and volunteered themselves to be the sacrifice for the jutsu that sealed the Kyuubi, or even volunteered their own child for the sealing, all the while spouting bullshit about how only an Uzumaki could hold the Kyuubi. The Sundaime Hokage could most certainly have stepped up to the task, His days had passed him by, but in his selfishness, Naruto had been left an orphan. As if that wasn't enough, he went ahead and revealed his status as a Jinchuriki to the entire village, letting him bear the brunt of the emotional torture that the village continued to pile upon him to this day. But it didn't hurt him anymore. He had steeled his heart long ago. Now, it only furthered his resolve. It only acted as a reminder that he did not have a place in this rotten village. That he would have to forge his own way in the world. He was denied a family right from the get-go, and even Kakashi, who would have become a brother to him, was put under a genjutsu to keep him away. And then when he thought he might have gained some semblance of a family among his long-lost relation to the Uchiha clan, Konoha brought it all crashing down to the ground without a second thought. Danzo had so shamelessly asked him to kill his teacher and the one who he was as close as he could have been to, and it was then that the first thoughts of defecting came to Naruto's mind. He had run, until he found him, already on the verge of death, breathing his last so far from help that he knew all was lost. And then, Shisui had all but ordered him to take his eye to Danzo, to make sure he didn't make him an enemy, else his days in Konoha would be numbered. Then came the hammer that buried the final nail in Konoha's coffin. The Uchiha massacre. He had seen how hours had passed and not a single Konoha ninja had approached the Uchiha district to see what was going on. Not a single effing soul. And then how quickly Danzo seemed to take advantage of the situation to recruit the remaining Uchiha children into his little army. He knew why the third kept root in existence. Because he had an image to maintain. Because his false image of kind grandfather hid the true visage of ruthless dictatorship that he truly possessed. And so, Danzo had an open playing field to strengthen his power base. There were still so many pieces to this puzzle that he didn't quite comprehend, but what he did understand was that he had little to no friends here, and he had no intention of begging for the village's friendship. Naruto was knocked out of memory lane when a scream echoed out from behind him. He instantly turned around to see a pair of attackers wearing breathing masks reducing Kakashi-sensei to paste, and then moving on to Kiyomi. By the time he drew his Taido and turned on his Sharingan, which was hidden behind a set of Fuinjutsu-enhanced lenses he had designed to make his eyes look blue even when he was using the Uchiha bloodline, Kiyomi had already kicked away one of them and gone off in pursuit while the other engaged Sasuke. He himself stood by the client, waiting to see what would happen. In a pincer move, the pair, who were connected by a long chain that extended from a gauntlet on each of their arms, abandoned their respective opponents and made for Naruto and the bridge builder. When they had reached a distance of 3 meters, Naruto drew a ready-made sealing tag from his hip pocket and slammed it onto the ground with his left hand, holding a ram sign with his right as he channeled chakra to power the seal. Immediately, a wall of reddish-orange flames sprang to life between them. The two masked assailants were offered no warning as they ran headfirst into the flames, screams of agony escaping their bodies as their front sides were burnt badly before the relatively low-powered barrier came down, depositing the badly scorched bodies on the forest floor before the blonde. They would be scarred for life, if they survived. Just then, Kakashi strolled out from behind a tree like he was taking a walk in the park. "Kakashi-sensei," Kiyomi exclaimed. "You're okay. I'm glad to see you weren't actually taken out by this riffraff." "Who are they?" Sasuke asked, curiously. "Naruto. Can you identify these two?" Naruto thought for a moment, then placed his index finger on a spot on his upper left forearm, and in a cloud of smoke, a thick book the size of a dictionary appeared. Flipping through the book expertly as if he knew it like the back of his own hand, he opened to the correct page, and after comparing their pictures with the real deal, began to recite from the book as if he knew it completely by heart. Gozu and Maizu, dubbed the Demon Brothers. Rogue Chunin from Kiri. Low B rank threat. Worth 2 million Ryo apiece, alive. Wanted for information on the whereabouts of Zabuza Momochi, who they are known to work under. Zabuza? Then I feared that this mission just got far more dangerous. Team, your first C rank mission may just have been boomed up to A rank. That's the end guys. If you enjoyed then make sure to leave a comment. This is Chaos Shinobi signing off.